Hello, my name is Dr. Patrick Brimstein, Superintendent of Brook High Schools. Since my arrival in July, 6 weeks ago, we have been spending the majority of my time and the time of our leadership team focusing solely on a safe reopening of schools. Our desire is to provide a seamless experience with quality and with your full confidence. And so we've been dedicating the majority of our time to do just that. My role at Brook is new here, but is not new to the job of being a superintendent. I have been superintendent, and my philosophy in leadership is really to develop the leadership capacity of those around me. Immediately the administrators, the teachers, our parents, and quite frankly our students. I feel, and I've found from my own experiences, that by doing that, that we tend to get better discussion and stronger, richer discussion and better ideas for stronger decisions. And obviously with a decision as great as reopening schools safely, I want as many participants involved in designing that as possible to represent the interests of everybody and also to do so again in the safest manner possible. So in order to really develop the plan, we've been collaborating not only as a leadership team, but also with our respective professional groups, be that the superintendents of Westchester County and surrounding areas, or the principals with their principal groups, but also with guidance from the CDC, the New York State Department of Health, as well as the New York State Education Guidance, and other groups such as Harvard and the American Academy of Pediatrics. We recognize that as a society, we've been traumatized by the coronavirus. Since March, our normal routines have been disrupted. Our relationships with our friends and our families have been compromised. I'm speaking from my own experiences. I have two parents, both in their 80s. I haven't seen them, and it's difficult for me and it's difficult for them. So I recognize that it's also difficult for you. So coming at this from the point of view that we've all endured some level of trauma, we understand it's really important to deal with the social and emotional dimensions of returning to school. How do we best meet your needs and explain things in a way that makes sense, that you're comfortable, and that's what our aim is to do. I also want to really comment on the fact that safety is truly our main priority. So the idea here is that our safety is interconnected, is quite frankly very physically true as well as emotionally true. So if a student were to become sick, and God forbid that happens, we also recognize that their health and well-being is connected to the health and well-being of the teacher, and then back to the brothers and sisters at home, and the moms and dads, the grandmas. So quite literally, every person's health is interconnected to someone else's. So it is our shared responsibility and our shared commitment to make sure that everyone is safe. And I'm deeply invested in making sure that that happens to the best of our ability. So one of the things I wanted to talk about too is that education is really at its best is nothing more than a network of complex relationships between a student and teacher, parents and teachers, administrators and teachers. And the idea that relationships are based on trust is more important now than ever before. So again, what we want to do is make sure that we're communicating the most clear way and the most open way. And if we don't get a chance to talk about something, you can always follow up with a private conversation. So our K-12 plan has really kept families in mind. And what I mean by that is that families will be in cohorts together so that the students in one household have similar experiences. That makes it easier for our parent partners to plan around the needs of school and their children as well as their own personal needs. Our cohort model also is based on science. It's based on best practices and medical understanding of the transmission of the disease, because our goal in school is to mitigate any transmission of the disease. And if coronavirus is introduced to our school, we've put into place mechanisms to safely address those and get the students the attention that they need in a way that doesn't expose other students. We've looked at this from 5 major perspectives. One is from an epidemiological perspective or a medical perspective to make sure that we have incorporated the best advice of what we know, how the disease is transmitted. We're very fortunate in our community to have a medical advisory team that is composed of doctors, residents, and they have residents of the district, and they have been advising us, and we've incorporated all of their advice into our plans. Our plan also looks at the lens of logistics. How do we best coordinate this so that the consistency is across the plan, so that our parents can reliably plan around what school is going to entail, whether that's the in-person or the remote sections. We've also looked at this from a communal lens. And quite frankly, I'm very grateful to the community for their generosity in sharing ideas that we've also incorporated into our plan. And of course, we're looking at our planning from a pedagogical or instructional standpoint. We want to make sure that we are delivering a high quality educational learning experience, and that any lessons learned from the past are incorporated in our future approaches. And finally, we're looking at this again as a social emotional lens to make sure that we're addressing the needs. Because if someone is feeling unsafe, they're not likely to be able to learn. And we want to make sure that people are feeling safe. And we also understand that our feelings, our own states of mind, are in some ways communicable as well. So if I'm feeling particularly happy, people around me tend to feel happy. If I'm feeling a little stressed out, people are going to pick up on that. And so my goal, quite frankly, is to make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable and secure and confident with our plans. And that's why we've taken such pains to make sure that we've incorporated people's feedback throughout the process. That's why we did surveys of students, of parents, and that's why we've incorporated a lot of that feedback right into our plan. So although the plan is developed, I would like to share with you that we're also contemplating additions and modifications to that plan, and there'll be more information on that forthcoming. But immediately, we're looking at soft reopening, and what that might entail is opportunities for parents and their sons and their daughters to come into school, to meet their teachers, to meet their principals, to walk around the buildings and get a sense and a feel of what it's going to be like. And if that takes a few days to get everybody through safely, and then we start education afterwards, I think that's an investment that's probably well worth it. Again, just to make sure that everyone is very clear on what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. In closing, I'd just like to say that not only is it important that everyone is safe, but also that they feel safe. And I know that a community that pulls together at a time of crisis is a strong community and is likely to become an even stronger community. So I thank you again for your patience, for your understanding, for your contributions, and for your faith in our team to deliver the best product to your sons and your daughters in the safest way possible. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Colin Byrne, the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment for the Blind Brook School District. I'm here to give you an overview of how instruction will work in both the hybrid and remote instruction models. The specifics of instruction will differ between buildings and will be discussed in more detail by the building administration. In either model, students will receive instruction in both their core subjects and in specials classes such as art, music, computers, and physical education. The way that the specials classes run will vary based on the school building. A hybrid model combines in-person and at-home learning. This model allows us to provide in-person learning while maintaining social distancing protocols. In the hybrid model, in-person instruction will look the same as it normally would, just with smaller groups of students. When students are working at home, they will be provided with work that will be a continuation of the learning that went on during in-person sessions. The daily schedule for hybrid learning at each school building has been developed to best meet the needs of the students in that building. Specific details of each building schedule will be discussed by the building principal and can be seen in the district's 2020-2021 reopening plan that is available on the district website. While our plan is to run in the hybrid learning model, there is always the possibility that the district may be forced into the remote instruction model due to an outbreak of COVID-19 in our area. The district has a fully articulated remote instruction plan that preserves many of the elements of the classroom experience as possible. Details of the remote learning plan can also be found in the 2020-2021 reopening plan on the district's website. In either model, there will be consistent live interaction with teachers. Students' learning will be assessed regularly, and timely feedback will be provided. At this time, regular grading policies and procedures will be in place. As it is a New York State requirement, attendance will be reported daily. Processes for reporting attendance will be established at each building. To facilitate learning in either mode, additional programs such as Zoom, Kami, and Screencastify have been purchased for the district. Teachers have been provided access to workshops on instructional techniques for hybrid and remote instruction through our local BOCES, as well as other service providers. Training courses in technology have also been established for teachers during the month of August. Further professional development needs are being discussed. Our overall goal is to provide your children with the best instruction possible while preserving their health and safety. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Ross, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Facilities here at the Blind Brook School District, and today I'm going to discuss three parts of our operation: facilities, transportation, and food service, as we begin to re-enter school next month in September. I'm going to start with facilities. Our plan has been all along to try to do as good a job cleaning as possible using the most state-of-the-art cleaning products. We're fortunate at Blind Brook to do all of our own cleaning. We do not contract out any of the labor, and so therefore we have very good control as to what goes on. We, with our custodians during the day, they are bus driver custodians, but we are bringing on a couple of extra custodians to start the year, and we have our night cleaners. So we anticipate using products that are either CDC or EPA regulated and approved, and these products typically are Clorox wipes and Hydrolite, which we will use with electrostatic sprayers. During the day, we anticipate cleaning or wiping down all of the high-touch areas on an ongoing, frequent basis. In between, at the Ridge Street School, the AM and PM session will be wiping down everything: desks, chairs, all high-touch areas, to the maximum extent that is possible. At the middle and high school, we will do that throughout the day. The cleaning that goes on after lunch, certainly at the middle high school, we'll do the necessary sanitization. There will be no lunch, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Generally speaking, we have construction ongoing at Ridge Street School, but this construction in the new year will be outside. Most all, as we speak today, August 17th, most all inside work at the Ridge Street School is near completion, and we're beginning the process of cleaning and painting and getting ready the school for next month. But once we are done, we will not have any construction inside, any construction workers inside, and we'll be able to maintain the cleanliness better than we have certainly during the past 6 months that we've had construction inside the building going on. Middle and high school, we anticipate that by the end of September, all work should be done on the inside, and we'll just probably be finishing up some punch list items and some site work at that point. So we're in much better shape at the middle high school because of the work was isolated, and we were not doing much infrastructure work on the inside. High school windows in the old portion of the high school, and the fire alarm system notwithstanding. So in terms of facilities, again, we're relying on our own people under the direction of Luis Rodriguez and Luis Greco. I anticipate no problems and a high order of cleaning and sanitization on a daily basis. And if we have to come in on a Saturday to augment the cleaning and do a more deeper cleaning, certainly we will do that as well. Okay, at this point, I'm going to talk about pupil transportation or school bus service. As everybody knows, the district is fortunate to own and operate its own school bus fleet for transporting students to the Ridge Street School, the middle school, and the high school. We do contract out to private parochial and special education schools, and both the Blind Brook school transportation operation and the contract operators are fully aware of what the protocols are to be in terms of riding buses and cleaning buses, and what the schedules are likely to be as we begin the school year for each of the schools. I think what's most important, though, for all faculty, staff, students, while they're in the buildings, and certainly the school bus is an extension of the school building while they're on school buses, is that everybody wears personal protective equipment, PPE. It's critical that everyone wear masks. I would highly encourage, if at all possible, wearing gloves as well. This way, if you're touching something, you're not touching it with your skin or your fingertips. So we are strongly encouraging social distancing. Expect that everybody is maintaining proper social distancing, and again, parents as well, everybody wearing masks at the very minimum, and again, encouraging the wearing of gloves. While you're on the school bus, there'll be one student to a seat. The way we've structured our routes, we'll only be transporting half the number of kids that are eligible and are assigned to that run. And that's every run, both to Ridge Street School and the middle and high school. So with the one child per seat, we're asking for siblings, brothers, sisters, to sit with one another, therefore freeing up additional space on the bus in the event that we need it. So if there are any issues, certainly you can always email me, jross@blindbrook.org, or Juan Zindon, J-Zindon, J-Z-H-I-N-D-O-N, at blindbrook.org if there are any issues related to the buses that your children are on. And I'll move over now to food service. So we anticipate that at Ridge Street School there will be no food service at all this year, at least for the start of the year. We'll see at what point perhaps the governor and circumstances permit a full day school. Once that does occur, there'll be some lead time, and Whitson's has promised to get up and running as fast as possible to provide food service as they did last year in the old gym while we're under construction. The middle high school, we anticipate a grab and go pre-order through the Choosy app, pre-ordering, and then there's a prepay that Patty DeLuvio is establishing. We believe that there will be hot and cold. We may initially have to start out with just cold grab and go at the middle and high school. We will be using the pickup window and perhaps one kiosk. But I think generally speaking, while we're not discouraging the purchasing of grab and go food, we are encouraging that children bring their lunch from home maybe the first week or two as we ramp up the services that are provided by Whitson's. So at this point, I've talked about facilities, transportation, and child nutrition, food service. And again, I would encourage anybody with a question to call me or email me. Perhaps email is best, jross@blindbrook.org. Patty DeLuvio, it's P. DeLuvio, DILLUVIO, at blindbrook.org. And again, Juan Zindon, JZHINDON, at blindbrook.org. Thank you for listening, and I wish the best to you and your family and your children especially, and we look forward to seeing them in about 3 weeks.
In the Brook School District, the health and safety of students and faculty is of paramount importance. In accordance with New York State guidelines, the school district will utilize a health screening app to ensure students meet the criteria for safe entry into the building. Each day, we will need your help in the process, as guardians will be required to complete the student health screening prior to the start of the school day. In real time, student statuses will be reported to the school personnel to allow for safe entry into the building. This team effort will help instruction begin in a timely manner each day. Specific app details and process will be shared with guardians prior to the start of the school year.
My name is Harry Berg, and I'm the Director of Pupil Services. I'm here to discuss special education in remote and hybrid learning environments as related to the Brook School's reopening plan. Please know that Brook is committed to providing all mandated services for students with disabilities as per the student's IEP or 504 accommodation plan in a manner that protects the health and safety of students as well as those providing these services. During both remote and hybrid instruction, special education programs and services will be regularly scheduled in all 3 buildings. If not provided in person, special education shall be provided using video conferencing technology to the extent possible. Special education programs and services will also continue to ensure students access to necessary accommodations, modifications, and technology, as well as provide monitoring and communication of student progress. Please know that until schools return to normal operating conditions, the same flexibility with respect to IEP implementation for delivery of equitable services to the extent possible that were established during the previous school closure due to the COVID-19 outbreak continues to apply to programs and services whether delivered in person or remotely, including flexibility with respect to the mode and or manner of delivery of services, group or individual sessions, and the specific group size, frequency, duration, and location of services. Additionally, please know that as per New York State guidance, if the parents or guardians of a student receiving special education services choose not to send their student back for in-person instruction, Blindbrook will provide instruction and special education remotely. In Blindbrook, we've also established that if a student receiving special education services in the hybrid model is recommended for any special class programming or is not making appropriate progress, the district will make efforts to provide as much in-person special education and related service as practicable. If you'd like further information related to special education, please refer to page 16 of the Blindbrook Reopening Plan, the district website, or feel free to reach out to me or Assistant Director Jennifer Herlihy at any time. Thank you, and please take care.
Hello, my name is DJ Goldman, and I am the Director of Physical Education, Health Education, and Interscholastic Athletics. I will begin by addressing some of the re-entry procedures that will be in place at the start of this school year. Each school principal will be able to provide information specific for their school building. Our school district will be securing an online health screening attestation application that must be completed prior to your child being permitted to enter the school building or ride the school bus. A push notification will be sent every morning. You will be able to set your notification preferences to be received via text, email, or both. Each school building will implement strategies for staggered arrival and dismissal times, as well as using multiple entrances and exits for students. When students enter the school building, they must move directly to their first classroom of the day. School lockers will not be used, and hallways will be monitored to encourage constant movement and prevent loitering. Outdoor classes will be used as often as is appropriate. Only touchless water bottle fill stations will be permitted. Finally, bathrooms will be modified to encourage social distancing. For instance, only every other sink will be available for use. Now, I would like to address some of the health and safety procedures that will be in place at the start of the school year. Social distancing will be enforced at all times. Classrooms will be set up in advance to ensure social distancing. Most hallways and staircases will be designated one way with appropriate signage. Any two-way hallways will utilize no walking zones and other signage to promote appropriate social distancing. There will be a Stop the Spread campaign with signage and videos. Some of the topics included in this campaign are using hand sanitizer and cleansing wipes upon entry to a classroom, washing hands anytime they are soiled. Face coverings will be required when social distancing is not possible and at all times during arrival, dismissal, and transition times. And there will be frequent age-appropriate messages about health and hygiene practices. Finally, we must have collective cooperation with all community members to assist in contact tracing efforts. The school district will be assisting the community as it relates to COVID testing. Information can be found in our district plan and is also available from the New York State COVID hotline and the Westchester Department of Health. Tests are also available through private medical providers. At this time, I will address physical education and interscholastic athletics. All physical education classes will be following the guidance released by the CDC, the New York State Department of Health, and the New York State Education Department. As per the current guidance, in-person classes will require 12 feet of social distance while participating in activities that require aerobic activity. Also, any individual equipment that is used will be sanitized after each use. As of Sunday, August 16th, interscholastic athletic activities are scheduled to begin on September 21st, and online registration will open on August 24th via Family ID. Communication from the athletic department can be expected by means of blast email through School Messenger along with updates to the athletics website. Governor Cuomo has not released an updated timeline for a final decision to be made. All athletic activities will comply with guidance released by the National Federation of High Schools, New York State Department of Education, New York State Public High School Athletic Association, and the Section 1 Office of Interscholastic Athletics. Additionally, health and safety measures will be implemented based upon recommendations from the CDC and the New York State Department of Health. Specific information about the Interscholastic Athletic Program can be found on the Blindbrook District website If you have any questions, please send me an email at dgoldman@blindbrook.org.
Hi, my name is Erica Abramson, and I'm a pediatrician at Weill Cornell and a parent of an elementary school child at Ridge Street and a middle school child at Blindbrook. And I'm here today to talk about my role and the role in the community of the Medical Advisory Committee for Blindbrook School District. So for those of you who don't know, the Medical Advisory Committee is a group of volunteers consisting of medical professionals. So we have pediatricians, we have internists, we have emergency medicine physicians, we have dentists who have been partnering with the administration and the board going back to March, trying to look at the best scientific evidence we have about how to guide school planning for the past year and the upcoming year. So a few principles that we have been adhering to as we move through the past few months and coming into the next academic year, which we wanted to share with the community. So the first thing is that what we know about this disease today is changing incredibly rapidly. And so one of the things that we are all learning on this journey is the importance of flexibility. So we look at all the scientific evidence that's out there. We spend lots of time looking through the literature. I'm involved in listservs from physicians around the country who are working with advising schools, and we try to make the best recommendations that we can at the time, but knowing that things can change at any minute. The second principle that we've all been working on is the fact that in order for this next year to be a success, it's critically important that the rates in the community stay low. So it's really everyone's collective responsibility to adhere to all the principles that we are saying, because we know that this disease can really spread rapidly, and that if the community rates start to rise, there's no chance for in-person learning for our children for the next year. And the last thing that we all want to recognize is that this has been an incredibly difficult time for everyone in this community, for parents, for children, for teachers, for administrators, and we know that we're all doing our very best. And so what we need to be doing is to support each other, because what's right for one family and what's right for one child and what's right for one teacher or administrator or staff member may not be right for somebody else, because everyone's circumstance is quite different. In terms of getting children back into the classroom, there are a number of things that we have been working with the school board and the administrators and the teachers on trying to do. So first thing we've spent a lot of time thinking about are the logistics of being in the schoolroom. So to keep everyone as safe as possible, we are asking for universal masking for children. A lot of people have had questions about whether it's safe for everyone to wear masks and what exceptions exist. And I can tell you as a pediatrician that the American Academy of Pediatrics is very clear that for all children over the age of 2, with very, very rare exceptions, everyone should be wearing masks. And those exceptions are very rare things, like somebody is actually unconscious, someone's having acute difficulty breathing in that particular moment, or they're unable physically to remove their mask should it become a hazard to them. Those are really the only exceptions. And it's really important to have children wear masks to keep them safe. Now, we know that this can be hard for children. It can be hard for adults as well. And so we're asking parents to really work to explain to children why it's important that they wear masks to keep everyone safe, and also practice with them at home, especially in the weeks prior to coming to school, in order to help facilitate that when children are in school. We've also spent a lot of time thinking about the physical layout of the buildings. Each one poses different challenges. And so within the buildings, we have gone to cohort models to make sure that children are with the smallest group of children possible, and that within the classrooms, we're maintaining at least a 6-foot radius around children. And so that is going to be true throughout the school. The other thing that we have been thinking about are what are higher and lower risk activities for children. So we know that certain activities such as band, chorus, indoor athletic activities pose a much higher risk of transmission. And so we've thought about what activities within the school can occur when children are there, and what activities should occur for children when they are home. And so those are decisions that have been built into the schedule. We've also paid a lot of attention to things like transportation. So trying to figure out, how do we safely get children to and from school? How do we limit children on the bus? How do we make sure that children are sitting next to their immediate family as opposed to what typically happens on a regular school bus? And also thinking about for more parents who might be driving, how are we going to maximize the entrances for drop off and pickup? And again, this is all with the goal of promoting social distancing. We've also spent a lot of time thinking about, regardless of what the academic year looks like in the upcoming months, about what we need to do to support virtual learning and also facilitate any of the shorter time we have in classrooms. So we're really going to be focusing a lot on promoting social emotional connectedness between teachers and students and other students, which can be a bit more challenging the way that this next year is going to be structured. We're also making sure to pay attention to children who may be more vulnerable in the school. And so that's children with mental health issues, which we know are rapidly emerging in the time of COVID due to social isolation, anxiety. Children may have lost loved ones or other people close to them. We know that families are under extraordinary stress from losing jobs, again, losing families. Tensions at home can be higher. And so we have to make sure that we're reaching out to families and students, and also think about students who have learning disabilities or learning difficulties, in which virtual learning and some of the changes can be particularly hard. So we spent a lot of time, again, working with the administration and advising them on suggestions to how to help make sure that all these resources and groups are paid attention to. We have not yet gotten into things like athletics, but that will be something that I know parents have asked about. And certainly in the weeks to come, we'll be thinking about how and what and if things can be done safely, because we know that sports and other kinds of things are actually really critically important for the development of children. So I hope that allays your concerns that at least there is a group of us who are really working very, very hard and partnering with the board and partnering with the teachers and partnering with the students and trying to give the best advice based on the best medical knowledge that we have. The only other thing I would like to say is that this year, more than ever, it's going to be really, really important that if your child has any medical symptoms, runny nose, cough, things that don't involve fevers where we typically would have sent them to school in years past, it's absolutely essential that children and teachers and staff stay home. We can't really take any chances. And until there's more robust testing infrastructure across this country, we all have to err on the side of caution to keep everyone safe. So thank you, and here's hoping to a great next year.
Good evening, and welcome to the Middle School Community Forum. I am Patricia Lambert, principal of Blind Brook Middle School. Tonight we will walk you through the various plans in place for a safe reopening of school and the remote learning plan that will be in effect in the event we have to close. In developing these plans, our major considerations included the health and safety of our entire school community and how to provide for the continuity of instruction in the richest and most authentic way possible, while acknowledging that we must be flexible to meet the volatile and changing conditions imposed by the COVID-19 virus. The success of this partnership is dependent upon all members of our school community adhering to the structures in place. We can promise you that we will continue to monitor and revise the plans to address any unforeseen problems, any outbreaks of the virus, and changes to the capacity of our technical infrastructure as they permit. The presentation is divided into 4 segments, including the health and safety measures that are specific to the middle school, teaching and learning, both in the hybrid and remote model, including the expectations we hold for students, parents, and teachers, and answers to questions that were submitted by the community prior to tonight. We will end the forum with a discussion of questions submitted during the presentation. We ask that you listen carefully to the questions that were addressed as part of the program so as not to be repetitive. Live questions should be submitted via the chat feature. Mr. Horowitz will serve as the moderator and relay any questions that were not addressed in the overall presentation. The entire forum will be available on our website after tonight. So, ready? Let's begin. Start with the building entry. The school building will be open to students at 7:40 a.m. Students who arrive earlier will not be permitted to enter the building prior to this time. Students will enter the building through an assigned door by grade level. Entrances will be monitored by trained aides and/or school monitors who will confirm that the daily attestation has been submitted. Students who have not completed this entry requirement will be escorted to the isolation area until the health check has been completed. Hand sanitizer, tissues, and trash cans will be located at every entrance. Upon entering the building, students will proceed directly to their Block 1 classroom. Students will not be using lockers during this pandemic. Personal protective equipment. All individuals who enter the district building or bus must wear a face covering that covers both the nose and the mouth. Face coverings must be tightly fitted around the nose and mouth. Bandanas and scarves are not considered appropriate face coverings by the district. Students are expected to bring a face mask with them whenever they will be in the school building or on a school bus. Disposable face masks will be available to students who forget to bring a face mask with them. Students who go outside for recess may remove their masks while outside, providing that the students maintain appropriate 6-foot social distancing. For personnel who are at higher risk of exposure to COVID-19, in particular our nursing staff, additional PPE will be purchased to help safeguard the safety of those individuals. This will include N95 respirator masks, gloves, face shields, and disposable gowns. Health, safety, and hygiene practices. Signage will be posted at entrances, in hallways, classrooms, bathrooms, and common areas. All classrooms will be provided with hand sanitizer, tissues, trash receptacles, disposable gloves, Lysol or Clorox wipes. Teachers will review and reinforce proper hygiene practices daily. Students will be required to wipe down their desk prior to sitting and to use hand sanitizer. There will be no sharing of materials or supplies, books, scissors, glue, tape, markers, etc. Equipment must be sanitized after each use and before the next use. Assigned, consistent seats will be held in every classroom. Doorways to commonly accessed spaces, such as the bathrooms or hallways, will be propped open during the school day. The district has implemented some alterations to its air filtration system, including setting the system to draw in outside air rather than recycling air, and the use of filters with a MERV 13 rating. This is the highest rated air filters available. All water fountains will be disabled. Instead, bottle refill stations will be available for use. All schools will continue to conduct mandatory fire and lockdown drills according to the existing statutory schedule as put forth by the New York SCD. Social distancing. Classrooms and common spaces will be set up to provide a minimum of 6 feet between students as well as adults in the classroom. There will be 12 feet separation in physical education and performance-based music classes. Markings on the ground in hallways, stairwells, and outside of entrances will be placed as reminders to socially distance. The majority of hallways and stairwells in the building will be one-directional. Two-way hallways will have tape on the ground to designate directional lanes. Staggered, extended passing time is available between classes. Prior to dismissing each class, teachers will look in the hallway to assess conditions. Teachers will remind students which way traffic moves in that hallway. There will be no locker use. Maximum occupancy signs posted on the bathroom doors with monitoring by aides and school monitors will keep students safe when they enter the bathroom. Sixth graders will be arranged in cohorts, which will remain together throughout the day. Cohorts will spend the majority of the day in one classroom, except for lunch, phys ed, and unified arts. Teaching and learning in both remote and hybrid functions. For consistency purposes, we have maintained the same schedule with the high school. It is our normal 8-day rotating drop block schedule. Times have been modified in order to provide for extra passing time as well as continuity over a hybrid and a remote schedule. The remote learning will take place in live 50-minute synchronous classes consisting of live interactive instruction and class discussions via Zoom. There will be independent and or small group interactions, i.e. Zoom breakout rooms. There will be lots more formative assessment than in the past. Homework and additional work may be assigned by teachers. Remote learning. Teachers are expected to design lessons which will include whole class instruction and or discussion, independent and or small group work, and formative assessment. They will utilize Google Classroom for posting assignments, deadlines, and the link to Zoom meetings. They will maintain consistency through assignments that will be posted at the time each class is scheduled to meet. Teachers will appear on camera. Teachers will take attendance and note absences as required by state law in our student management system. Teachers will notify parents as soon as possible should there be a pattern of inattendance, lack of work completion, or other concerns. Teachers will maintain open communication with students, parents, guidance counselors, mental health staff, and grade level team members to monitor student progress. Students will record their Zoom lessons in the event that a student is sick or unable to attend class at a designated time. Student expectations. Students are expected to attend all regular classes per the letter day schedule. Students are expected to log in 5 minutes prior to the start time of classes to ensure they are logged in and ready when class begins. Attendance rules will apply. Therefore, students who enter late will be marked as tardy. Join Zoom meetings using their first and last name and appear on camera as directed by the teacher. Students will be appropriately dressed and in a setting that is conducive to learning. We ask that students do not appear on camera in their bed in their pajamas. Students will utilize per teacher's directions and become familiar with breakout room features for one-to-one instruction and small group discussion or interaction. Students will utilize features that assist in classroom management, including the mute and raise your hand features. Students will comply with teacher requests to attend extra help sessions or individual teacher-student conferences. Students will work with guidance counselors and or support staff when requested. Note, students are prohibited from recording the live sessions in any media application. Parent expectations. Parents are expected to assist students in locating an environment conducive to learning and ensure students have access to required materials. Parents are expected to arrange for the pickup of school-issued materials when such days are scheduled. We ask that parents ensure that students adhere to the daily schedule and attend all classes. We ask parents to encourage students to log on 5 minutes prior to the start of each class. We ask parents to notify the school of any restrictions that students may experience with regard to access to technology, internet connectivity, and appropriate learning environments. Parents, please notify the attendance office if your child is unable to attend school due to illness, technological issues, or other excusable absences by emailing msattendance@blindbrook.org. Please notify teachers with any questions or concerns that may arise. Please utilize the school-issued resources, for example, tutorials, workshops, etc., in order to become familiar with how to monitor student progress and work completion. Utilize video communication platforms like Zoom and provide general assistance to your child. Please honor the classroom confidentiality, counseling session norms, and privacy laws by not participating in classroom learning. Schedule for the hybrid model is something that you're familiar with at this point. Learning in the hybrid model. It's important to know that teachers have revised and identified the priority standards that must be taught for each course. Units are designed and implemented either via a problem or project-based learning or the flipped classroom format. Within each unit, there will be opportunities for students to develop and enhance their knowledge and content-related skills. In addition, learning tasks will foster the development of critical thinking, problem-solving, and collaborative skills. Unit objectives will be clearly defined at the beginning of each unit, along with learning tasks and student resources. This will provide students with increased interdependence, the ability to work at their own pace, and an element of choice. Students will also be able to assess their mastery on the objectives throughout the unit. Teachers will determine what content and skills students will need access to in order to achieve the unit objectives. Students will access this content from home through a combination of videos, teacher-created, Khan Academy, National Geographic, etc., texts, articles, textbooks, websites, novels, etc., and digital tools, simulators, digital content, etc. Teachers will formulate discussion questions and hold class small group tasks for the remote sessions all students will engage in on Wednesdays. On in-class days, the focus will be on skill acquisition and development, hands-on learning, i.e. the labs, research, projects, writing, creation of art, etc., and individual support such as conferencing, providing direct feedback, reinforcement, remediation, enrichment, etc. On learning at home days, students will engage in asynchronous learning of content and skills via videos, text, digital resources, engaging in independent partner work, working on projects and assignments, etc. Learning tasks, assignments, and deadlines for these days will be posted on Google Classroom by 7:50 a.m. While students are encouraged to follow their schedules on these days, the learning will be asynchronous and can take place at any time so that students can further develop time management skills, increased autonomy, and self-advocacy. Should questions arise, students should email their teacher, but understand that there may be delayed responses as teachers will be working with students who are in the building that day. On Wednesdays, when the entire school will be remote, it will be synchronous whole class instruction, which will include direct instruction and class discussion, small group work via Zoom, breakout rooms, or similar, and formative assessment and feedback. On learning in school days, the focus is on skill acquisition and development, hands-on learning, labs, research projects, writing assignments, creation of art, etc., and individual support, such as conferencing, providing direct feedback, reinforcement, remediation, enrichment, etc. Professional development and planning. A great deal of work was done this summer by our teachers across the district in order to hone their skills in both technology resources as well as ways of identifying within their curriculum the most important foundational skills that need to be worked on. There have been multiple workshops that were provided by the district and outside sources, and we are looking to continue to offer these workshops not only for the teachers but also for the parents in the near future so that they will be best equipped to assist their students in this process. Part 3 deals with questions that were submitted. First question asked if there was any consideration to reverting to the old schedule because of the issues that are inherent with a rotating drop block schedule. I can assure you that we looked at this extensively with the hope of being able to simplify this schedule. The problem was that we have to remain aligned with the high school for facilities purposes as well as continuity between hybrid and remote models. We have to make sure that the classes can be balanced and that dealing with the cohorts, the geographic cohorts where students were divided. So the bottom line is that a master schedule takes roughly 4 months to complete. And unfortunately, the master schedule was begun in January, which it normally is. It was really pretty much completed by April, at a time when we were still uncertain as to how long this pandemic would continue. We will continue to look at ways to adapt and modify the schedule if it's at all possible. Second question asks, when will students receive their schedules and their teachers? Student cohorts are currently accessible via the school parent portal. and student schedules will be posted by the portal on Monday, August 31st. Directions for how to access that are included in this presentation. Third question asked again about PD. What training opportunities have been offered for teachers to enhance remote teaching skills over the summer? In a nutshell, I can tell you that every request that we received was granted. I would estimate that I approved more than 100 workshops for teachers from the time we went into COVID to the present day. We will be providing additional opportunities for teachers during Superintendent's Conference Day, as well as in the weeks leading up to that time. Next question asked was dealing with technology. If their child has their own device, can they turn in their Chromebook so it can go to another student in need? That has always been the policy at the high school. It's not so much at the middle school because of the fact that so many of our programs are embedded within the computers here. Without students using our own programs, they will be at a disadvantage in order to maintain consistency with the rest of the class. So the answer for the middle school is no. And believe me, I wish we could do that because we could use the laptops at this point. How will you be sure that students and staff arriving at school are not sick? Will temperature checks be taken at the door? Again, much has been sent out about this, that we are using an app that will require parents to affirm on a daily basis that their child is not demonstrating any symptoms of fever or other symptoms associated with COVID. Teachers also will have to complete this attestation on a daily basis. We will be providing random checks throughout the day of temperature and monitoring student symptoms. What will arrival look like for students coming to school on buses versus parent drop-off? It could be very different in the morning as we go through arrival and figure out how to best keep students safe. Bus times will be coordinated with the 7:40 opening, so buses will not be arriving on campus before 7:30. When students do arrive, whether it's through the bus or through being dropped off by parents or walkers, they will be mindful of the social distancing. There will be markings on the ground in front of each of the entrances, so we will automatically be dividing students. They will know which door to enter. When they do, they will have to wait their turn, if you will, because they will be checked at the door to make sure that their parents have completed the attestation form that morning. Will there be bus from the middle school to the elementary school at dismissal? That is not scheduled at this time. The shuttle bus that usually went to the Ridge Street before continuing on its route was associated with the athletes in the athletic program who were doing their practices or training at the elementary school. That is not in effect now, so it might change as the year goes on, but there are no fall sports, so that will not be the case. Question about carpooling. And as much as we appreciate carpooling for the environment, we ask that you do not carpool because inherent within that will be the mixing of other students. Will there be any outdoor instruction? The answer to that is yes. Whenever possible, when a lesson is aligned with the ability to be outside, that will be the situation. Will windows be open? There's some contradictory information on that in terms of having windows open, or which would then let in air that is unfiltered, as opposed to keeping the windows closed. We'll be looking for more guidance on that. But at this point in time, we have outfitted all of our air returns with the highest level of filters, which kind of suggests that the filtered air might be better than air coming outside. But we will confirm that, and when possible, if that is the recommendation, the windows will be open. How will you monitor the families traveling in Cuomo hot states the 2 weeks before school to make sure they quarantine and don't come to school? Perhaps the greatest lesson we can teach our children during this pandemic is their role and responsibility that we all have to keep each other safe. It's our hope that all members of the Blind Brook community recognize this tenet of the social contract and act responsibly. The decision to begin school remotely acknowledged the possibility that families may have traveled. The delay implementing the hybrid model builds in the recommended quarantine time. So we're trying to cover all the bases here. Next question deals with classrooms. How many students will be in a classroom at any given time? I can tell you this, that depending upon the cohorts, there might be some inconsistency. The vast majority of classes will have fewer than 12 students in a class, more like 7 to 12. All classrooms have been assigned based upon their ability to hold students to the 6 or 12 feet social distancing requirement. Next question is if there is one student with COVID-19 in school, will you shut the school down, and for how long? Should a student test positive for COVID-19, or a staff member for that matter, the Department of Health will be contacted. Cohorts and students groups have been established to facilitate contact tracing. Decisions regarding a return to fully remote learning will be made on a case-by-case basis in conjunction with the Department of Health and state guidelines. Since most one-day holidays fall on a Monday, how will it work for the students who are only in on Monday or Tuesday? The number of holidays and vacation days each cohort will miss balances out over the course of the year. And yes, you're right, it is not ideal that students will only have one day of FaceTime with their teachers if they are in that first cohort and attending school on Monday and Tuesdays. But again, it varies throughout the year when the holidays fall, so it does balance out. Next question, for those students taking high school classes, how can we be sure the kids are fully prepared to take the Regents exams at the end of the year? And will the school provide them with anything they need to make good grades and appear on their high school transcript? And I can honestly say that thankfully all of our Regents course teachers have a proven record of successfully preparing students for the Regents exams. We're confident that the school district will continue to provide the necessary instruction to ensure success. In the past, the district has offered prep sessions for students prior to exams. If necessary, this may be implemented. It was something we did in the high school for the biology Regents, and presumably that can be offered again if it is determined that we need it. If kids do not practice social distancing, are there any consequences? Given the magnitude of changes to our health and safety protocols, we need to deliberately and strategically educate students regarding the new expectations, both within the classroom and common spaces. Additional aides and school monitors will be brought in to supervise student movement in the hallways and in common spaces, and to provide reminders and support as needed. Should any student demonstrate an inability to follow safety protocols, he or she will be sent to the isolation area and parents will be contacted. Next question deals with lunch. How will lunch be handled to maintain safety? Who will monitor students during lunch? How will we ensure that children wash their hands prior to eating? Will all students have access to eating outdoors? Have you thought of making periods shorter and ending the day earlier so that kids can eat lunch at home? And will students be required to eat lunch at school for the days they are in person? This is a challenge. We're currently exploring all of our options regarding lunch and the supervision, including outdoors, eating outdoors. We recognize the impact of the limited amount of interaction students will have with each other during the academic day and are exploring ways to safely allow a more communal lunch. Student behavior and their ability to abide by their safety precautions will ultimately determine our ability to provide this opportunity. Right now, we are thinking of students eating lunch in their classrooms. If we are able to safely feel that we can put them at individual desks in the cafeteria, which would allow them to have at least some verbal interaction with kids who are not in their individual cohorts. And by that I mean students who are assigned the same learning days but are not in their actual classes or the cohort that the sixth grade will be with all day. We would love to make that happen, but we will have to carefully monitor our students' ability to do that. All hands will be on deck. Students will be monitored by teachers, aides, security personnel, and administrators. We strongly encourage students to bring their lunch from home. There will be pre-order grab-and-go meals which will be available from the food service, but options will be limited. There will not be hot lunches. question about whether we could have truncated the classes. There would be no way to do that in order to have students out early enough to have lunch at a viable time. And parents have always had the option to pick up their children for lunch by sending in a note and indicating the time of the pickup. Will remote learning be the same as it was in the spring? If not, how it will be different? Bottom line is all remote learning, when the entire school is on remote learning, will be live instruction via Zoom. There will be teacher FaceTime with children, period by period, teacher by teacher. In the hybrid model, on the 2 days when students are home without live instruction, why can't work be given to complete and submit during each class period, which would simulate in-person learning? This would force them to adhere to the typical school day schedule rather than thinking there is no urgency to start their assignments in the morning. Long response here. While we agree that maintaining a schedule is important and hope that students will be following their daily schedules and routines, remember that teachers will be working with students in the building while others are home learning. It may not be possible for teachers to post immediately prior to their scheduled class time. Their responsibilities have increased to include monitoring the halls to ensure students maintain social distancing while changing classes and conducting hygiene protocols when students enter each class. By posting in the morning, the availability of assignments is guaranteed. During remote learning in the spring, we heard from many students and parents that they appreciated the opportunity to work at their own pace and time. We hope the time of asynchronous learning helps students develop the important life skills of time management, self-efficacy, organization, independence, and responsibility. Next question deals with options for students to opt for fully remote learning. These were all addressed within the course of the presentation, and in essence, everyone can opt for whichever model they want. There will be fluidity between the models, so if you are worried initially and opt for remote, you can deselect that option at any point and join your assigned cohort. We did do the numbers of the classroom sizes based upon all the students attending. Part of that question also included whether or not students who are on remote learning, when the hybrid model is in place, will they have access to live teacher interactions? At this point, the answer is on Wednesdays, yes, when the entire class will be remote and working via Zoom with live instruction. However, it's unfortunate, but at this point in time, we do not have the capacity for all teachers to live stream from their classroom when remote students are home. We do hope that once we have an accurate number of the students who are opting for full remote, if we can do it, we will. But at this point, we will not know that until we have tested the broadband, tested the capacity, know the full numbers. If it's possible to pretty much put kids together who are taking the same class, it would have to usurp their schedule, but we try to make that happen. That is very much on our radar to continue to look at, but it's something that we will not know until we absolutely have a dry run with learning in school and the ability to live stream. If the school is in the hybrid model, what would the school experience be like for students who choose to stay home full time? Same thing. So that's pretty much explaining the fact that students who choose full remote at this point in time will only have direct FaceTime with their teachers on Wednesdays. They will also, though, I should point this out, they will be assigned a teacher or an aide, hopefully a teacher who doesn't have a full schedule because of the changes with the way instruction has to take place. They will have an opportunity, they will be assigned a case manager, someone who will be checking in with them remotely and making sure that they have that one-to-one time. They will be the liaison for any questions or problems that might be cropping up. Next question is interesting. How much of the regular curriculum do you envision being able to get through with this hybrid model? 50, 75, or 100%? I think the important thing to understand is that New York State has provided us with hundreds of standards that we are required to have students complete, in some cases by the end of 5th grade, other cases by the end of 6th grade, other cases by the end of 8th grade, and in other instances by the end of 12th grade. Our teachers have worked very hard this summer figuring out what can be cut. We all have our idiosyncrasies. We all have certain parts of a curriculum that we love to teach, which may or may not be deemed necessary or fundamental to the skills that students need to continue to be successful. So the curriculum as we may have known it was not regular per se. It was not in stone. It was often a case of what we chose to emphasize. So during the summer and going forward, our teachers are looking very critically at what it is that they teach and how they go about doing it. And we are looking for opportunities to have skills be more integrated across the different disciplines. So things might look very different, but we pretty much think that it might be better. Will children who are ill, not feeling well, or are on quarantine be able to attend class remotely on their in-person days? And again, that was addressed as part of that other discussion of our capabilities. At this point, we do not have the broadband to be able to live stream from every classroom in the building to the classes at home, to the students who are at home. Again, it's something we will continue to monitor, and if it is possible, certainly we believe that that would be the best thing to be able to do, and we will try to make that happen. Another question about the safety drills. They have been modified to a certain extent. We still have to have the same number, but ultimately, even when we are in a lockdown situation, we will be looking to implement the social distancing, and those distinctions will be labeled in each classroom. Next question. Will desk clusters be separated to allow for more space between students? Of course. All classrooms have been measured and furniture is arranged to ensure they are 6 feet apart. Will lockers be spaced between cohorts so students aren't bunched up? Students will not be using lockers. Will mask requirements be reinforced by teachers and staff, including proper use over mouth and nose? Absolutely. How will buildings be cleaned throughout the day as the children switch classrooms? Will they switch or will the teachers switch? There are two possible scenarios here. The 6th graders who all take the same classes, they in fact will remain in the same classrooms and teachers will rotate through. With the 7th and 8th grade, it's not possible to do that because there are so many different combinations with what students are taking, whether it's a math class or a language class or even the electives that they take in the 8th grade. So that's not possible, and students will be changing classes. The protocol when a child enters a room will be to sanitize their hands and then ultimately to wipe down their desk in between. We will not be having the custodial staff available to go in to every class in between class sessions. Will there be any in-person or after-school clubs? At this time, no. Are you giving out Chromebooks for people who do not have an extra computer for their child? We have committed to giving all 6th and 7th graders Chromebooks. At this point in time, 7th graders are guaranteed. There is a backlog on the order of Chromebooks for the 6th graders. They will be distributed as soon as they come in. At this point, we move to the live question and answers, and Mr. Horowitz will submit questions that have been provided beforehand.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Before we get into the questions, I just want to clarify, we did not realize that this Zoom this evening was going to be run as a Zoom webinar, which does not allow us to use the chat feature. So if you have any questions, we're going to ask that you go to the email you received earlier today, which had the link to this Zoom. In that same email is a link for you to submit questions. Any questions you submit in the next 15 or 20 minutes, we will certainly try to answer. Anything that we don't get to tonight, we will certainly respond to you after the fact. We do have some questions that were submitted during the last few days. We're going to start with questions dealing with teaching and learning. Mrs. Lambert, the first question is, what kind of assessment measures will be given to help determine if a student is learning during the hybrid model and is really able to access the academics?
Thank you, Mr. Horowitz, and welcome. Welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I know this is a long presentation. We did want to get everything down in writing in order to ensure that when you miss things that you would have access to it on the district website tomorrow. So everything will be accessible there. All right, so talking about teaching and learning, certainly knowing what your student knows when they first enter your classroom is important. It is something that all good teachers do as common practice. I think going into the 2021 academic year, it's even more important than ever that we pre-assess as students come in. So ultimately, we will be encouraging teachers to plan pre-assessments for all of their units. This, as I mentioned, is best practice to begin with, and it is something that teachers will do in order to be able to differentiate instruction, provide enrichment opportunities for students as you engage in whatever the unit objectives are. The other part of that is that we do use the STAR assessments in math and ELA. And these will be ever more important this year due to the fact that we didn't have a state assessment last year and other data points. So we certainly look at multiple measures in order to be able to determine where students are, what the gaps might be that exist, and then also to do the remediation or the enrichment that might be suggested from that. So we will be very much focused on pre-assessments and utilizing the STAR vehicle in order to be able to gather that data and to really work with students to be able to show that and demonstrate their growth and mastery as we go through the year.
And as you mentioned earlier in the video, all lessons will have some element of formative assessment built in so that the teacher will be able to tell, within a few hours whether the student is understanding, whether the student is on task, or whether the student perhaps needs some extra help or some extra reinforcement. Okay. Ms. Lambert, a question came in about how work will be reviewed when a student is working from home and what time frame students can expect to receive feedback on their work.
It's an excellent question, and I think similar to probably the way we started last year, as we were, getting our groundwork done with conducting live synchronous sessions. Most assignments will be posted on the Google Classroom, and they will be submitted that way too. Teachers require, and they have very specific requirements as to when and how individual students will upload and present their work. Some of that can be reviewed immediately, others the way teachers would normally review an assignment. And in last year, we initially started by only checking for completion. That will not be the case now. The teachers will be actually assessing the submitted work as they normally would with an in-class situation. So it will vary. I mean, depending upon if it's an essay that a teacher now has to read 100 essays, that takes obviously a lot longer than going through math homework that might have been submitted, might include 10 problems. So it's going to vary. Teachers will be very clear, as they are, in terms of what the turnaround time would be. We did note that when you are learning asynchronously, when the teacher is in school teaching the classes, they will be checking their email, but ultimately based upon their schedule for that particular day, there most likely will not be an immediate response during that class period. So even though, let's say, for example, your child is following their regular schedule and is working on their English class while the rest of their class is in class, It's unlikely that a teacher would be able to stop, because we want to maximize the time on task while the teacher has that direct FaceTime with the students. So there will be a lag or delay in the response that will take place there. But we've got amazing teachers who are incredibly professional. I'm sure they are not going to want their students to be wasting time when they're actually in school teaching. So they will do their best to make sure that they respond in a timely manner and make sure that the student is on track.
Thank you. The next question is asking about the two different cohorts of students in terms of them being aligned in regards to material. So I will actually go ahead and answer this one if that's okay.
Yes.
The best practice regarding hybrid learning is that we're not thinking in terms of one group is in school, one group is at home. What's the in-school group doing today versus the at-home group doing? The best practice is that all of the students are really learning the content at home. Sort of this idea of a flipped classroom or project-based learning. So a teacher might structure a week where on Monday, all the students will need to get certain content or certain skills. The students at home will be getting that at home via videos, via text, via independent or group assignments. The students that are in school may be getting that for homework that night when they go home. They may watch the video or read the text or work on those assignments. The idea is that when students are in school, the focus should not be on the delivery of content. The focus should be on social emotional learning. The focus should be on assessing students' skill level. It should be on communication, on discussion. It should be looking at ways to foster collaboration between students that are in the building. It should be hands-on learning, perhaps a scientific investigation, perhaps conferencing on students' writing. I hope this makes sense, but the idea is that when students are in school, the learning that they're getting is sort of supplemental. It's not focusing on content. It's really focusing on what does each student in that room need on that particular day so that they can continue to move through their unit to show mastery of their learning. The following question was asking about what happens if a teacher is out sick. Will there be a substitute for an in-person day versus a remote day?
Teachers are professional, and even under normal circumstances, when a teacher is absent, obviously we provide a substitute, and the teacher submits his or her lessons for that day. The only time that doesn't happen, and the only time that we would expect that not happen, would be in the case of a dire emergency where the teacher is unable to do that. So let's assume that the work will be submitted. It will be posted on Google Classroom. If we're talking about in-class learning, when students, if it's a hybrid model and the teacher is out on a day when she's got a cohort of students, there will absolutely be a substitute in that classroom. I would hope, again, I've mentioned the question, the outstanding question about what our technical ability is. I'm thinking about if there's a situation where a teacher has to be quarantined. They're not necessarily sick, they feel fine. Would it be possible for that teacher then to live stream from his or her home computer into the school? Maybe, I don't know. But we will constantly seek to adapt and revise and bring the best possible learning experience that we can. But certainly, just like any other normal circumstance, if a teacher is absent, there will be work provided, and there will be, if in-school supervision through a substitute. And then hopefully there are no other long-term things that we'd have to look at, but it would be something that we would look at on a regular basis.
Thank you. A question came in regarding extra help and how that can be provided with social distancing and with cohorts.
So right now, the way we're looking at the schedule, there is a relatively long lunch period. I say relatively long, and that's because we've added 10 minutes of passing time. So if you take the normal 50-minute lunch, 50-minute period at 10 minutes on either side. We're looking at about 70 minutes. Depending upon how we end up, whether students are, sparsely located throughout the cafeteria or in their classrooms, we're still talking about very small numbers. So traditionally, part of the lunch period has been used by teachers to provide their extra help. That, I imagine, will be an option. It is up to the teachers to coordinate with their team and the other teachers who are serving the same group of students to decide how and when their extra help is given. On average, they give about 340 minutes of extra help a week. And as I said, that will vary. It might even well be that teachers can do extra help via Zoom in small groups. They can do breakout rooms. So we're hoping that it can be much more personalized in nature. Certainly, if you've got 10 or 12 kids in a classroom for extra help, that can be accommodated because of the way we've set up the desks and ensured the social distancing possible. So yes, you're probably not going to have head-to-head conferences where students and teachers will be that close, but ultimately the opportunities for extra help will be there.
The next few questions are in regard to the incoming sixth graders. A few questions related to, can there be an in-person orientation? And what kind of special care might we be giving to the sixth graders? So I will jump on this one. As you know, we've been pushing out orientation material all summer. We held off as long as we could regarding making decisions with an orientation because we were really hoping that we would be able to bring the kids in. At this point, all sixth grade families have been invited to sign up for a Zoom orientation that we'll be holding the last week of August. We're going to be doing 5 of them so that we can have, limit the number of people because it will be an interaction. We want students to be able to hear from us. We want to be able to answer their questions and whatnot. In terms of an in-person orientation, at this point, it is not feasible because if we were going to give tours, we would have to limit them to 8 to 10 students, which means we would have to have at least 15 different sessions. And unfortunately, with everything that has to be done between now and the beginning of school, it's not possible. We have been working with the teachers. Our sixth grade team is fantastic. They are working on designing a different type of orientation experience than what we normally do. And what we're planning on doing is the first day that each cohort comes in, when they go to their first period class, or even perhaps outside the building, they will be met by their teacher. And the teachers on those first few days where the students are live in the building, the teachers will give them a tour. They will do all of the orientation activities. We do a great scavenger hunt where the students get to learn where things are in the building. We do all sorts of team building activities, all sorts of getting to know you activities. And at this point, given all of the safety considerations, it makes sense to do those on those days since the students will already be in the building in small groups. So yes, there will be a lot of things going on. We are in the works, planning is happening. I know our sixth grade team has been communicating already the last few weeks, trying to figure out how to best meet the needs of the kids, how to introduce them to our building. We know that there's naturally some anxiety with coming to middle school, and now you throw in COVID and all of this, and of course anxiety levels are ramped up, and we are planning, and we are going to get those students in the building, and we are going to make it a wonderful experience for them, and hopefully they will, within their first hour or two in the building, just feel that it is their home for the next 3 years and that they are really part of our school community. The next question I'm going to throw to Dr. Ross. Dr. Ross, are you available?
I am.
Great. A question came in about when the buses will be cleaned. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Buses will be cleaned in between their runs, naturally the time permitting, but the high touch areas coming in and going out of the bus will be gone over in between the AM and the midday runs, because we do have midday runs for the elementary school. The buses will be gone over a little bit more in detail. And then certainly the same in the afternoon when they get back from their midday run. And at the end of the day, at the conclusion of full transportation service for that day, the buses will be gone over once more by the bus driver custodians.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Goldman, are you there?
Yes, hello, Mr. Horowitz.
Hi, DJ. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. We have a number of questions I'm hoping you can answer for us. The first one involves how we're going to handle typical fall and winter illness. So for example, if a student has a fever or any cold symptoms, and they're then tested for COVID or strep or the flu, what would happen in the time that it takes to get the test results back? Would the whole cohort have to quarantine? Can you speak a little bit to what the plans are?
Yeah, definitely. I think the most important thing to keep in mind this year, anytime anyone is experiencing any symptoms of being ill, you have to stay home. We really need to make sure that anyone who's displaying any symptoms stays home from school, and that will be a part of the attestation application that will be completed online before any student comes into the building. Also, as in any other time, if you are experiencing symptoms, we advise that you meet with your private medical director, and hopefully your physician will be able to assist in diagnosing whatever the potential illness may be. If there is a student who early in the morning before arriving to school is feeling well, but then during the course of the school day starts to develop symptoms, the procedure is going to be that the student is sent either to the nurse's office or the isolation room, and then parents are going to be contacted to make sure that the student can get home safely. Again, we want to make sure that anyone experiencing any symptoms of any illness goes home and starts to recover. Specifically to COVID cases, we're going to be working hand in hand with the Westchester County Department of Health. They will be informing us about who will need to quarantine based upon the contact tracing efforts, and obviously we'll be assisting them any way possible. I think the important thing to remember is if there are any questions about whether or not a child has COVID, it's important just to try and get tested. We recommend that you get tested, and as per the guidance released by the Department of Health, anyone within the household must quarantine for the period of time that's recommended, and usually it's anywhere between 10 or 14 days, but the Department of Health will be able to explain that, or the private medical director, usually with their discharge papers, when the test is performed.
And DJ, if a student shows up at the nurse's office, is the nurse able or equipped to be able to separate sort of COVID symptoms versus other ailments?
I think one of the things that Dr. Abramson said earlier on about everybody being flexible, and the disease is still ever changing. So at this point, our entire nursing staff is going to be erring on the side of caution. And again, anyone that is sick or is displaying symptoms is going to be sent home. And it really would be best to consult with your private medical provider to help assist in being able to determine what that potential illness is.
If I can just add quickly to that, Mr. Horowitz. So also, I just want to highlight again that we're going to have a separate room for students who are, or employees who are suspected of having COVID. We're going to try to separate those who are sick or hurt or just have a normal illness with those who are COVID. And, I think before it was said that, students will be, anybody who's suspected of COVID will be sent to the nurse. If the nurse is not available, that we'll have another location for them to go, to be isolated, to keep them away from other people so that they don't infect other people, and that, people who are going in for a stubbed toe don't end up with getting COVID.
Mr. Goldman, in terms of decisions regarding, potential school closure, which data are we looking at to track cases? Are we using county, state, or other? Because the county and the state don't necessarily match each other.
Sure. So the primary focus that we're going to be using is any positive cases within our school community. So that's going to be the first step. And we will be working together with the county Department of Health regarding the contact tracing efforts and also any potential quarantine or closure. As far as specific numbers, the Governor Cuomo has indicated that if regional infection rates, and again, for those of you that may or may not remember, we're considered the Mid-Hudson region back when we were going through everything back in March from phase 1 through phase 4. So the governor has indicated that if the regional infection rate reaches 9%, then all schools within the region will be shut down. We're also working very closely with the District Medical Advisory Committee as they have access to additional data to help forecast potential spread within our area.
Thank you. Can you give an example? We know that we're going to have mask breaks built into the day. Can you give an example of how what a mask break might look like?
Sure. I think we're all learning this together, and I think that once students are back in the classrooms, we'll be able to work with teachers to determine what most appropriate mask breaks look like. One example that I've heard is that we could have a class that's ongoing where the students are socially distanced, and one student will be permitted to drop their mask while seated at his or her desk. The other students will still have their masks on and be able to contribute to classroom discussion for the short period of time. And then after a minute or so, then the student who was on the break would put the mask back on, and then potentially another student could then take their mask break. This way, the student who removes the mask would not be participating in any classroom discussion, which is the way that the break could work effectively to help mitigate any potential spread.
And an unrelated question, but still within your domain, will modified sports be able to take place this fall?
Well, we sure hope so. Only as of right now, earlier today, Governor Cuomo actually announced that there will be an update regarding the entire state's interscholastic athletic program. The update will be released early next week. So as of this moment right now, all of our fall sports are scheduled to start on September 21st. But again, it is pending Governor Cuomo's approval. So similarly, our athletic registration on Family ID is supposed to open 30 days prior to the start, but we are going to hold off because it was supposed to launch on Monday. We're going to hold off until we hear exactly what the governor says in his announcement. So for anyone who doesn't follow the governor's announcements, I will be sending out a blast email through our school messenger system, and I'll also update the athletics website as soon as possible after that announcement comes out from the governor's office.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're going to switch topics. We have a number of questions regarding special education services. Mr. Berg, are you available to join us? Just unmute yourself.
Yes, I am. Hello.
Thank you. Hello. Can you talk a little bit about how special education services will be delivered, specifically the co-taught and consult classes and learning center support?
Sure. As was done in the previous COVID closure, can you just wait one moment, please? I just want to make sure there wasn't background noise. I apologize for that. So in terms of the special education services, similar to those that were provided in the first closure from March to June, these special education services will continue to be provided in the periods as per the general ed schedule at the middle school. The ICT and consultant teacher services will also be provided in their assigned periods, and the providers will consult with the general education teachers as they did in the previous model. The other thing to know about the services is that these services will be provided at times, or could be provided in what they referred to as an equitable manner to those on the IEP, which in the fully remote model may not be an issue, because if they're following the schedule and all the classes meet. But in the hybrid model, there is a chance that the services could be adjusted in terms of their frequency or duration.
Okay, thank you. As parents know at this point, as we know, the middle school and high school will be starting school with full remote learning for the first 2 weeks of school. How will Learning Center be handled during that time period?
Again, and sort of to piggyback on what I just said, in a fully remote model, the learning centers would then still meet as scheduled. They're scheduled for a period, so the learning centers could meet in that same capacity in a fully remote model. Also, I do want to take this opportunity to thank the special education staff. They do an amazing job at the middle school and elementary school and high school. who knows who's listening tonight. And they do an excellent job of connecting with students as well as their families, and are really an incredible support system. So as we learned through the first closure, the special ed staff connects with the students and provides them with the support and the motivation and what the students need. They're very skilled, not only in their content areas and just building skills, but they're also middle school specialists, which presents its own challenges in terms of connecting with students and motivating them. So in the hybrid model, it is, there could be I've gotten a few questions about Learning Center in the hybrid model. And there, if the students are in-house and there is the scheduled learning centers, then obviously they would be attending them in person. And the district is fully committed to the neighborhood cohorts. So at this point, if you're in-house, you're going to your learning center as scheduled. If you're on the cohort that's not in school, that learning center time would be provided remotely. And that's where you might get more involved in the kind of the equitable kind of distribution of the time as opposed to a full time. The other thing we can also talk to the providers about, the other thing I did not bring up in terms of the delivery of the services remotely will be provided via video conferencing to the extent possible. And also, one of the things we could consider for a student who's home during a learning center time would be to Zoom them into the class or to be able to provide that type of support. So that is something that those types of things would be addressed, sort of managed by the case managers or the learning center teachers, and would be done on kind of a case-by-case basis. But like I said, I really do, look to our professional staff who know the students well and kind of know what they need in order to be successful. And I know people who have worked with the middle school special education staff find them incredibly supportive and student-centered, and provide and go, above and beyond to support them.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add to that too?
Sure, Pat.
I have to say, when we went into the remote learning in the spring with very little time to prepare, I think anyone who had any experience with our special education, these are amazing people who immediately took up the charge of making sure that they were in constant contact with their students. I mean, to the point where, intervening and making sure that the students had the materials and doing interventions and getting probably the first Zoom classes that took place were between special educators and their students. So I am so proud to work with the teachers at the middle school and what they are willing to do for kids. I know it was exhausting at that point because we were very, very concerned with the social and emotional health of students. And in many cases, not students who weren't designated with an IEP or a 504. But as a professional teaching and learning community, I was so proud of how active they were in making sure that the students were all right and that they were getting the services that they need. I have every reason to believe that that will continue, and that they'll excel with that because that's who they are. So just a shout out to my staff because they've done an amazing job, and what they've done over the summer in order to be really fully prepared, I'm expecting some great things. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Pat. And as you know, and I'm looking right across the top of my screen, you know, Seth, Pat, and I are three administrators who are very knowledgeable and sort of committed to middle school education. And you can't talk about the supporting a middle school child without talking about supporting them in a social emotional manner. So we thank the teachers as well as the school social worker and the guidance counselors who work incredibly diligently and worked incredibly diligently through the closure, meeting on a regular manner to address the issues as they come up. And I think that's the other piece that, you know, in terms of the special education pieces, New York State has provided us some pretty specific guidance and support in terms of the special education area. And we've also gone a little above and beyond that to also identify that if there are students, one of our commitments is also to assess and monitor students' progress. And if for some reason that student is not making the progress or appropriate progress, then at that point, we can also be revisiting the types of supports and services that we're offering. And that could potentially include more in-person instruction if it's possible. And that's really, in terms of opening and starting, our commitment is to the health and safety. And in those neighborhood cohorts, we are not looking to provide additional in-person, but again, we could be looking at the services that are being provided. And like anybody in special education, if you're having questions or concerns, please, you could always call a program review meeting, or you can, you know, first reach out to me or Jennifer Herlihy, or you could also have a formal program review meeting if we need that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berg. Ms. Lambert, a question came in regarding the possibility of setting up tents on the turf field so that students could perhaps have lunch outside. Would you like to speak to the tents?
I'm going to say good night. Thank you so much. If you need me again, let me know.
Thank you.
Yes, you know, tents have been talked about a lot, and we have looked into it. The state recently put out the requirements for tents, which are actually considered to be an extension of the building. Anything more than 400 square feet has all kinds of caveats in terms of what has to be done. When we met with the PTA last week, or was it this week? Recently, ultimately, you know, they have been so incredibly generous. They were talking about what they can do in order to help promote any kind of outdoor education or activities. I did share with them the state requirements, which I think are better described as restrictions. It would be almost impossible to get through the red tape and to get the architect involved and the plan submitted and approved. Very, very cumbersome. Don't know when it would be able to happen. And ultimately, we're thinking that you know, if students want to go, if teachers want to take students out for classes, they're not going to do it in inclement weather. So, you know, the need for a tent. We did talk about possibly, you know, asking for donations of freestanding umbrellas and scattering them about. But the PTA is looking into purchasing things like camp chairs that we would be able to sanitize in between and have kids be able to take them out and, you know, to have like a, you know, comfortable back supported seat in order to, for learning and for eating. You know, will we move some of the current tables outside? All kinds of plans that we're thinking about. But in terms of the actual tents at this point, I'm not optimistic that it's something that we'd be able to get in place while meeting all the safety requirements and the fire codes and attaching to the building and the plans. So it really is, you know, it's a great idea, but very, very difficult to implement.
question. I believe you mentioned this in the video, but just for clarification, will our sixth graders be able to take home economics? And if so, will they move to that classroom or will they stay in their cohort classroom?
Well, I'm delighted to announce that we've made a recommendation for, as many of you know, Jane Rom, who was our exceptional family and consumer science teacher, retired this year because of fears of COVID and vulnerabilities. So very reluctantly, she put in her resignation, and we wish her well and hope to celebrate her service to the district when this is all over. But we were able to secure someone who I believe will be an exceptional candidate, an experienced family and consumer science teacher who comes to us from Clarkstown. So hopefully she will be board approved at the next meeting. So yes, long answer to a short question. Yes, the students will have home ec or family consumer science, and they will actually be using the classroom. Although I will tell you, the candidate that we had was described to me as doing her remote instruction like Martha Stewart without the production team. So if you can imagine that, I mean, it sounds like a good deal either way. But yes, they will be having family and consumer science.
And when they go to family consumer science or art, technology, digital media, they will be going with their cohort, but they will be going down to those classrooms.
Yes.
Question about AIS services and how those will work in terms of the hybrid and the remote models. So with AIS, for those that are unfamiliar with it, AIS is Academic Intervention Services. They are designed to remedy students whose skill levels are below grade level. And the way to assess that is to use a standardized assessment. In Blind Brook, we use the STAR assessment. So what we will be looking to do is to have the students take the STAR reading and the STAR math, most likely towards the end of September. That is the time frame that is recommended. And based on each student's results, we then look to see whether there are skill deficits that fall below that grade level. And AIS is designed to remedy those skill deficits that are below grade level. So until we have the STAR assessment, we will not be able to identify those, especially since our students did not take the New York State assessments this past spring. So AIS will begin most likely the beginning of October, once our students have taken those STAR assessments and we've had time to analyze the results. The next question is about on Wednesdays with the hybrid schedule. So Ms. Lambert, you mentioned that we don't currently have the capability to stream from every classroom to students that are home. The parent is asking, how are we able to do that on Wednesdays?
Well, because on Wednesdays, I'm not sure if some teachers will be in the building, but it will not be a situation where everyone is in the building. We are looking to be bringing some teachers in to live stream from their classrooms if that's something that is necessary. But theoretically, the vast majority of teachers will be home on Wednesdays as well, and they will be live streaming from their homes as opposed to from the classrooms.
Do you anticipate it in terms of face masks, since they are mandatory? There are lots of designs and patterns and things out there, really fun masks. Do you anticipate there being any restrictions in place regarding what expressions might be on a face mask?
I would think the same, the dress code as part of the code of conduct would apply. And really in terms of we encourage students to express themselves and to demonstrate individuality. Certainly when it comes to the normal dress code, we don't allow things that promote drug or alcohol use or that would be considered offensive. So, certain pithy slogans and things like that. I think most people can use their best judgment and realize that no one wants to wear something that would be considered offensive to other people, but we do have the right to express ourselves. Dr. Bernstein, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, actually, I would love to comment on that because as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about my socks. And I like to wear expressive socks. You guys can't see it right now. Mr. Horowitz is laughing at me in a very collegial way. By all means, you guys are doing a lovely job about talking about the team of people that are around the particular needs of middle school students. And they have a very unique set of developmental needs, and the fact that you have a team that is so responsive and understands the social emotional well-being, the belongingness factors are such an integral part of the middle school experience. And how do you kind of create that in times of a pandemic? So I would imagine when I come over and visit your building, when the students are there, I'm going to see a lot of really fun and expressive masks. And I think that's going to be a wonderful thing. But how else do we, make meaning of difficult times and to have a little laughter once in a while? So I look forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
And I have ordered a few already that I thought students would get a chuckle out of seeing. Ms. Lambert, the next question is in regards to assessment when we are fully remote. So this past spring, getting thrown into the situation, it was, a learning curve for everybody as we were going. Can you speak a little bit to how teachers might be assessing students if students are remotely learning?
Well, I think inherent is that in that question is probably a belief that assessment is pen and paper, multiple choice, series of questions, things like that done in a timed environment. And I think one of the silver linings of this pandemic and the way it is forcing us all to look at instruction and what we do and how we do it is that I think we've all known for quite some time that that's probably not the most optimal way of determining a student's mastery. We have put a lot of emphasis on student kind of where they are at any given point, and that became a summative assignment. So in conversations that I'm having with teachers, it might be very well that, you are doing your assessments in a very, very different way, that you are ultimately giving students projects. And, I think we all know that applying your knowledge and being able to demonstrate or to create something with the knowledge that you've learned. So I would imagine that, we're going to be looking at a lot of assessment that will be much more performance-based. And that might be in terms of, students creating videos. I think of some of the wonderful things that our teachers did last fall or last spring. In science, they created cycles of the moon, but again, very much looking at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and also the idea that rather than students just memorizing something, and I think this goes to what you were talking about with the content, that if we truly are focusing on skills and kind of growth over time, that demonstrating that will look very, very differently. And I hope that's the direction that we're going in. So it might not be a weekly test or the weekly quiz or as some people say, the Quizlet or, things of that nature. I would hope that the way we are structuring content now will be over time, performance-based, project hands-on, that there'll be multiple ways of, in fact, demonstrating your knowledge. So, Colin, Dr. Byrne, do you want to add to that?
I did, and thank you. And yes, I think you're right, exactly on the money, Mrs. Lambert. I think there has been a lot of good work done in changing the way we do assessments. I just also wanted to add in that I know teachers have done a lot of work in researching technology in terms of how to leverage that to assess students in some of these new formative ways. And just wanted to give a quick thank you to our technology staff developer, Jennifer Vasquez, who's been running some training sessions with teachers on technology, part of which were focused on how to use these tools to help with assessments, to help with feedback. Those pieces that we heard in the spring were problematic and people need a little assistance with. But I agree with 100% with Ms. Lambert with what she was saying.
Thank you. And to tie into that, there were a few questions that were asking for clarification regarding the example I gave earlier. And it's difficult to talk about without actually showing a visual. But we know that teachers are going to have less time with students. That is a given. And as Ms. Lambert said, our teachers have been prioritizing what standards, what skills students must master, as opposed to, what topics do I enjoy teaching, or what things, do I think the kids will really enjoy, even if it's not necessarily related to a standard. And as I'm sure most of you have seen, the kind of learning that your children are doing is very different than how we were taught when we were in school. When we were in school, at least for myself, it was very much teacher-centered, where the teacher was at the front of the room, lecturing, writing notes on the board. We were copying them down. We were asked to spit them back on assessments. Learning today looks very different, and it is a complete shift. So the teacher should not be the sage on the stage, standing up front, conveying his or her knowledge. The teachers really should be the guide on the side. And so the way that teachers will be planning is they'll be looking at, for each unit, they'll be identifying what are the objectives of this unit. What is it that students need to know and need to be able to do by the end of the unit? So they're going to start by identifying what the outcomes need to be. They're then going to ask themselves, okay, what content do students need in order to meet these outcomes? What the teachers will then do is they will source and find this content. Many of our teachers will choose to make their own videos in order to deliver this content. Many teachers will go to pre-made videos, such as those created by Khan Academy or National Geographic or any other number of videos that are out there. Teachers will look for text. They will look for articles. They will pull pages from textbooks and workbooks and novels. They'll look for online simulators. They'll look for online modeling tools. And they're going to figure out how to get that content to students at home. So that when students are in the building, it's not about the teacher standing up front giving content. It's about the teacher really interacting with the students. It's about the teacher really doing hands-on learning or probing or helping the kids to problem solve, to take where they currently are and figure out, okay, what does this student need to go a little bit deeper? What does that student need to go a little bit deeper? To give students opportunities to collaborate with one another in the room. Because it would be a real shame if the 2 days a week, the students were sitting in their desks while the teachers were just simply spewing information at them. And so we've been doing a lot of research. Our teachers have been going through training with project-based learning. There was a question about what would this look like for math class. Our math teachers are already very skilled. In fact, for math, our 3 math teachers were making videos last spring, and they were having students get the content by watching the video, and then they would interact with students to go over the questions, to find out, okay, did you understand question 1? If not, what was it about this question that you didn't understand? To really target those interactive opportunities to help deepen student learning. When we can get together or later on, I would love to show you visually some examples of how units can be planned this way. I think looking at them visually, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm sorry that we don't have that this evening to share with you. Ms. Lambert, can you reiterate what the process will be for the cleaning of desks and chairs when students are moving from room to room?
Yes, so when students enter the room, they're going to sanitize their hands immediately. Gloves will be available for students who might have sensitive skin. They are going to be given wipes for either Clorox or Lysol, whatever. I'm not sure what we have in the building at this point. and they will be required to wipe the top of their desk, the back of their seat, and any of the surfaces that will be used. We had decided on that because we wanted to be sure. I mean, we figured that that would be a little bit, we'd have more assurances that it was sanitized rather than having students do it before they leave, as they leave a class. So that's what we're expecting to happen for the first 2-3 minutes of every class coming in.
A clarification question. If a student is sick and was supposed to be in person, why not have him or her just jump into the online setting that day? And that's what we would do. The student would get the content piece that the students at home would be getting, either by watching the videos or reading the text or doing the simulators. They just would not be able to interact live with the teacher because the teacher would be teaching the students in the room. But the student would still be able to move forward with the content and with the unit objectives. Question about the first day of school for students. Again, that will be, as of now, Monday, September 21st will be the first day that students come into the building. School begins on September 8th, and we will be in a fully remote mode at that point. Ms. Lambert, a parent is asking if they can take a tour of the building, as it might help them make a decision regarding their comfort level with sending a child in or not.
I'm sure we could arrange that. I mean, if you can reach out to me, I would hope that you give us another week, because we are in the process of, putting the tape on the floor. They're still finishing up the cleaning of the building, and in some cases there's furniture in the halls and things of that nature. There are construction men in finishing up some of the electrical work on the alarm system. So the later we can do this, the better for our situation. I know in some cases we have asked that people inform the district if they are opting for the fully remote situation, and I know that that is imperative for the elementary school. The middle school, we've indicated that you can be fluid and change your mind, if you will, deselect your option, because we have kind of safeguarded against any overcrowding by making sure that as we created the classes, they were based on the assumption that we would have full participation in school. So that's not an issue. So I would ask parents to give me another week or so until we have everything in place, so that your perceptions will be grounded in the reality of what the building will be like when we come to open. But I can say that we've certainly taken into consideration all kinds of things in terms of trying to make this the safest environment possible. So.
Another question came in regarding, and I think you spoke about this in the video, I believe, in terms of students taking Regents level classes, do we still have expectations that they will get through the course, that they will be prepared to take those high stakes exams?
Well, I would hope that the state of New York is smart enough to realize that, if this year is interrupted, and if there is a sense that the Regents exams would be harmful as opposed to being an accurate measure of student understanding and mastery, that they would do what they did this year, the right thing, and cancel them. If they don't do that, I'm sure we would, keep in mind too, you can retake Regents, but we wouldn't really want to get to that. What we have done, and I did mention this in the video when I was in the high school, since every ninth grader takes the living environment Regents, we did do some assessing, and we realized that we needed to provide some remediation and some extra help, and we made those classes available to students. So I'm confident that if we felt that there was a deficiency or that there was a unit that wasn't, Mr. Harwood, you're the earth science expert, having taught that successfully for years. I'll defer to you with that. Do you think that as a teacher, you would know if there was an issue and that there would be things that we could do in order to compensate for any lost time or instruction.
Absolutely. I have no doubt that any of our teachers, regardless of whether they're teaching a high school class or not, will be able to plan the delivery of units and objectives to meet every objective that needs to be met for that year. It will involve creativity, which I actually think is a really good thing. You know, in all of this, you know, COVID land that we've been living in for these last 6 months, Ms. Lambert often speaks to the silver linings. And, you know, I really do think that we have some great opportunities here. Blind Brook offers a fantastic education for our students, but we can always do better. And I think this opportunity is going to push us to do better and push us to be more creative and push us to rethink how teachers plan units and how we deliver instruction. And just the idea that when you think about literacy standards, reading and writing, the same standards apply to English, science, and social studies. Right now, the time is ripe. It is perfect for our teachers to really start planning together and thinking about, okay, if there's a skill and we are all responsible for developing that skill, let's strategically plan how to do that with our students. So perhaps the English teacher gives a mini lesson on a skill, and then the social studies teacher that same day or the next day has the student practice that skill in the lens of social studies. And then perhaps the science teacher at the same time is further developing that skill with the lens of a scientist. So rather than students being given the same or similar tasks in one class and a second class and a third class, let's interweave them. And let's figure out how we can support one another and make the learning more enriching for our students and help our students to achieve, you know, their highest level of success by going deeper and really honing in on those essential skills. So yes, again, long answer to a short question. Absolutely, I have no doubt that we can get through.
May I add to that?
Of course.
Of course.
I want to thank, again, you guys are doing a phenomenal job explaining the details of things, the higher concepts of things. But I just feel I need to comment on what Mr. Horowitz just said. We've talked a lot about this at leadership and just how do we utilize what looks like a crisis as an opportunity to really ask deeper questions and again, Pat, I think you talk about it extensively as well, that silver lining. That's what we do. We look for opportunities to advance and to enrich what we provide. So it's so easy right now to kind of lose ourselves in the anxiety of the times and all the disruptions of the times. And I'm not saying this, we shouldn't, because there's a lot to be concerned about. But at the same time, we would almost be remiss if we didn't see this as an opportunity to truly redefine how we work with each other, what we value, and what we try to provide as value. So I'm very impressed by the level of discourse and the conversations you're having and sharing with parents, because I think it's reassuring that you're not solely caught up in the immediate, but you're also looking for the long-term best interests of those students. So thank you.
Absolutely. There is one last question that I'm seeing at the moment. Actually, I want to refer back to that last question about the parent tours. I would actually think that what we can do is in the next week or two, perhaps we could make a video walking around the building, letting the parents see what the building looks like, rather than bringing others into the building. I know that with cleaning and with our awareness of COVID and everything, I think perhaps it might be more beneficial to be able to allow everyone to see it without having to bring people in. So we can talk more about that. The last question that I'm seeing, and I apologize if I missed any, we will go back through them, and if we missed any, we will reach out to parents. A parent is asking, you know, they appreciate what we're talking about in terms of the teacher not lecturing and whatnot. And they're sort of saying, how will that be possible with tonight, you know, the parents not really being able to interact? And I will just say that tonight, there's 2 different modes of Zoom available, and we are using Zoom Webinar for the first time this evening. Zoom Webinar is meant for when you have large audiences. And in that case, there is not the interaction, but the regular Zoom that our teachers will be using does allow for the interaction, and it allows for what's called breakout rooms, where a teacher can actually assign students to little breakout rooms of 2s, 3s, 4s, and the teacher can pop in and out of those rooms. So during the course of a 50-minute period, the teacher might introduce the lesson, they might do a mini lesson, and then they might give students a task and put students into these breakout rooms. And while the students are working collaboratively, the teacher would be able to go in and monitor the students, answer questions, provide feedback to the students, and then be able to go into the other breakout rooms and do the same thing. And so those are some features that we don't have access to this evening because we are using the Zoom webinar mode. So again, that is it for what I see as terms of questions that came in this evening. I want to thank everybody again for being with us tonight. We know that reopening school, and whether you send your child back to school or not, we know this is a very personal decision. We know that it can be rather unsettling. Many of us have our own children and are going through the same thing right now, and we can certainly relate to the conversations you're having at home. And I for one, appreciate you taking time out of your family evening this evening to join us and for you to ask these questions. We've had some really, really good thought-provoking questions. So on behalf of myself, I want to thank you. Wishing everyone a very enjoyable next few weeks. Enjoy the remainder of the summer. And we'll be reaching out again as early as next week to give you more information as things continue to unfold. We want to share with you as much as we can. And I believe, as somebody said in one of the videos, information has been coming to us in bits and pieces and things are changing. And so it's been a little challenging for us to communicate as timely as we would like. But when we do communicate, we want to be able to give you as much as we can and not have to tell you something and then the next day backtrack because things changed. So we thank you for your patience, and we look forward to getting your children with us. It's been a really tough summer. It's been a very challenging summer for all of us, and we cannot wait to get back to what we all love doing, and that is working with children. So thank you very much.
And one final word. Again, I want to thank Seth Horowitz for joining us tonight. He is on vacation, long overdue. He put off his vacation in order to work on revising plans and schedules and doing all the work that has led us to this point. So he's coming to us from Maine, and I was on pins and needles hoping that he didn't get caught or cut off with his communications. But so Seth, thank you so much. Thank your family for sharing you with us tonight. And again, to the community, all I can really do is promise you that we will be reflective and look at all of our decisions critically. Please know that none of these decisions were done rashly. The amount of resources that were checked, I think, I think just the panel tonight kind of showed a little bit of the scope of all the different considerations. For every question we had, there were 10 additional questions that would be generated. We are committed to making the best possible learning experience for our students in whatever shape that takes, whether it's hybrid, whether it's full remote, and we will be constantly looking to change it. Some of these decisions had to be made very quickly in order to get rosters and be able to count up desks and move around furniture and do all these things that are part of this. Deciding which stairway is going up and which one is only going to be used to come down, like all these crazy little minutia details that had to be worked out. But we are flexible. We are, we're not possessive of many of these things. We need to get things started and to see what happens. And I can promise you that we will be in a constant mode of critical analysis and thought and adapting to the conditions as they change or as we get new information or there are new requirements. So we are, it's a little cliche at this point, we are all in this together. and our safety and welfare and our ability, as Dr. Abramson said, our ability to open school and to get back to normal is dependent upon all of us doing our best in order to make that happen. So I thank you as a community for your support and your patience, because I know we're chomping at the bit. We want answers, and believe me, we want answers too. But we'll get through this, and together we will be better. So thank you.